Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. There was a brawl between two families at Walt Disney World. And as both of these families were visiting Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, they decided to take a photo just near the entrance gates in front of a 100th anniversary sign that celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company. Now, as one of the families was setting up to take their photo in front of the 100th anniversary sign, another family wanted to take their picture in the same place at the same time. And as the first family was looking to set up to take their photo, the second family seemed like they weren't patient, and what happened was here, both of these families got into a brawl that security had to break up and law enforcement had to get involved with. Now, according to the Orange County Sheriff's Office, this looks like an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the behavior of the families at this brawl, it really fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis, and the behavior of feminist indoctrinated women I talk about in my other book, The Woman Crisis, and really makes me think about the live stream I did last week talking about why people are so sensitive these days. Now, many years ago, people had a lot of discipline, and because they had discipline, what they would do in situations like this is wait for one family to finish taking their photo, and then they would set up to take their photo. That's how people used to do things back in the 80s. People used to have patience and discipline to say to themselves, okay, I see this family is setting up to take a photo, so what I'm going to do in order to get the best shot possible is just wait for these people to finish what they are doing, and then they would go out here, get the space to go out here and take their shot, because you've got basically all the time to go do all the things you want to do at Walt Disney World after you take this photo. However, in the case of these two families, it looks like neither family had any sort of ability to have any self-control, and because they didn't have any self-control, neither family seemed to have any patience to wait for the other. I mean, this is something people used to do as a basic courtesy to each other back in the 80s. I remember going to places like Coney Island, Rye Playland, and the Bronx Zoo, and people would just wait for somebody if they were at a attraction or a landmark. They would just sit there and wait for that person to finish, and they would then take their photo. But what we have here today are a lot of people who are very anxious, and I believe they have become anxious due to the lingering mental health issues as related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, your Dr. Fauci back in 2020 thought that lockdowns would be a good way to quarantine people to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Unfortunately, what we've got 3 years later is a lot of people with serious mental health issues. And I say that they have serious mental health issues because people are exhibiting the same type of dysfunctional behavior that I read about in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, because in Crime and Punishment, the lead character is isolated in a prison for an extended period of time, and their mental health winds up deteriorating. And the same thing happened in Tom Hanks's classic movie Castaway, where he was talking to a busted Wilson volleyball. So this is what can happen to people when they're isolated for extended periods of time and their mental health deteriorates, because people need to be around other people, and when they're isolated for any sort of time, they wind up becoming anxious, they wind up becoming very jittery, and they become extremely sensitive, And in the case of many Americans these days, they have become so sensitive that they're on a hair trigger, and the least little thing these days basically sets people off to act impulsively and act in a way that does harm to others. And that's what I basically saw as related to what happened in that incident at Walt Disney World. What happened there was we had two groups of people who were looking to enjoy a day at the park, but couldn't enjoy a day at the park because their senses had been raised to such high level that they really had no sort of discipline or self-control, and whenever they ran into another human being, they got triggered by that other human being, saw them as a threat to them, and saw them as a threat to them to the point where they wanted to do harm to another human being. That's what basically happened here as related to this incident that took place at Walt Disney World. We had two groups of people who were just so anxious as related to taking this photo that they didn't understand how to go out here and solve this problem. And again, solving this problem only required patience. Unfortunately, they didn't have patience because I believe possibly both of them thought, oh, I'm only here for a day. I might have had to have waited a couple of hours to get in line, and there may be long waits at the lines as related to certain rides and attractions, and that had them keyed up to try to rush to take this photo. And as they were keyed up to take this photo at one of the most expensive tourist attractions, what happened was these people went from looking to have a day of pleasure to having an explosion in rage. And that's basically because, again, Americans today are extremely anxious, and again, they are anxious because they have just been under so much pressure over the last 2 to 3 years over the pandemic, and also having to deal with things like having their jobs taken away from them, having their jobs basically put in jeopardy with things like the jab mandates that many blue states implemented. Many people today are extremely tense and are on edge, and even when they go to have a vacation to escape their stress, what happens is, because these people have been pushed to the limits as related to stress, what we're seeing is a lot of people going off like this. Now, this isn't just the first incident to take place at Walt Disney World. Many years ago, there was a viral video of a black family that went into a brawl, and over the corresponding years after it, we've seen more and more of these brawls. And what's really troubling here is that people aren't really connecting the dots as related to why we are seeing so much of this kind of violence in a place that's supposed to be a fun escape place for children. Many people are not connecting the dots as related to why we are seeing this surge in violence at Walt Disney World and other locations. And again, I believe a lot of it has to do partially with the man crisis due to the way we raise males, and the woman crisis to the way we raise women, and the complete collapse of the American family. But I also believe a lot of it was accelerated with the lockdowns of the pandemic. I believe that the lockdowns of the pandemic have taken us from being afraid of a virus to a cancer of mental health that has led to people becoming anxious, many becoming paranoid, and people acting on their impulses in violent fashions without ever thinking critically about their actions or how their actions would impact others. Because Walt Disney World is supposed to be a place that's for children, and you would think adults would be making an effort to show the most positive example to their kids. But in the case of many of these people, they are just so caught up in themselves and how they are feeling at the point as related to their stress that they cannot think about trying to show a positive example to their children. And the brawl that I saw in that viral video really mirrors that of the viral video I saw years ago. And what's really troubling in both cases is you had children basically looking at their parents, getting into this violent encounter, and some kids basically feeling empty and abandoned by their parents, who were so caught up in their feelings and their frustrations and their stress that they forgot about the most important people in their lives, which are their children. Again, this whole situation is a troubling one that shows us in America in a very troubling state of affairs, because we no longer have any sort of civility or order when people go out here and can't even have the patience to respect another person going out here looking to take a photo in front of a 100th anniversary sign for Walt Disney World. And it's really sad that 100 years into Walt Disney World being around, that we don't have it being a magic kingdom that brings out the best in families. No, what we have is a kingdom in chaos, where people are just basically losing all control over themselves. And as they lose all control over themselves, all they do is act on their impulses violently, and they act impulsively in front of children, not showing them an example of positive manhood or positive womanhood as related to conflict resolution. Because again, back in the 1980s when I was a boy, yes, there were lots of landmarks and things that people wanted to take pictures in front of, and because people were raised differently, what they understood was, okay, he's going to get his picture, or this family's going to get their picture, and all I have to do is wait, and I just have to wait because that's just how it is. And when you go to a place like a Walt Disney World, you have to understand that you have to get there really early, and you have to get there really early because you want to be able to see all of the attractions. You want to see go on all of the rides and go all of the places. And if you go there, you need to allocate enough time. But a lot of people, they think, oh, I can go leave my house at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And then they press themselves for time because the park is going to close at a certain hour. And this adds to the stress that they already have as related to their jobs and related to sometimes people budget for these types of trips. And as they're budgeting for these types of trips, they start to feel the stress. And that stress is, again, further exacerbated these days because people are no longer ticking time bombs, they're landmines. And what's scary is that we don't know when these people are going to go off or what they're going to do when they go off. And again, that's what makes life in America like walking on eggshells these days, because you don't know what's going to set somebody off. Because again, in a matter like this, back when I was a kid in the 1980s, was something people didn't get this crazy about. No, again, I'm going to repeat it for the third time. People just used to wait their turn, and they just respected another person. They said, okay, I see that this person is already came before me, and I need to respect their space. I need to respect their time. And it's a 100th anniversary sign. It's always going to be here. So if I want to get this picture in front of this sign, what I do is I wait my turn, and then I get my picture, and then I can get on with the rest of my day. That's what people who are critical thinkers go out here and do, because they understand they have the patience to go out here and do this. But from what I've seen over the last 20 to 30 years, patience isn't something we're teaching people. No, what we do in our super fast society is we want to rush and do things, and rushing is never something you want to do. No, rushing is what causes you stress. Rushing is what causes you anxiety. You don't have to do it so fast. You just have to wait to the right moment. And again, this is what people who understand being patient is about. And that's why you can go out here and relax in a place like Disney World and enjoy all of the experiences instead of trying to rush around and trying to do everything. Again, I look at our culture, and our culture is having it where people are just losing control. And it's really scary because, again, a trip to Disney World should be something fun, but it's hard to have fun when your whole world is rushing around and you're trying to go out here and rush everything around like people are trying to do today in our fast-paced social media world. People have social anxiety, as I see it, because they're on social media. They're rushing to do everything, trying to be as fast as a computer. But maybe people need to take a minute and slow down and experience this thing called life, because God doesn't want us to rush around like this to get to the point where we're so anxious that we act on our impulses and don't understand that these things have consequences to our families, because what's really sad is to say, oh, I have a memory of Disney World where dad got arrested and mom and dad got into a fight with other people. That's really sad for a kid to say about their parents, and it's a sad reflection of America at this point, that a family can't even enjoy a vacation without people looking to go out here and lose it. Now, I understand that Disney World is a very, very busy place, but in places that are very busy and very crowded, you got to learn how to calm down and relax, because while you've gone here again, and you may not have that, you got to go out early so you can experience what you want to experience and enjoy the trip to have a vacation that you want. I mean, this is something people have to learn how to do, because the way things are going at this point, if we have more of these incidents, I fear somebody bringing a weapon and it going from a brawl into some sort of violent incident. Because if we don't really deal with these issues as related to, as I see it, the man crisis and the woman crisis, we may hear about another great tragedy at Disney, and that would be one of the greatest tragedies to show us how the Magic Kingdom has become a kingdom in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what's leading to people becoming dysfunctional like this, you can pick up my books, The Man Crisis and The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Target. And if you want to see me make more men's issues videos like this, and family issues like this, you can send a donation to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today.